What is good, Raider Nation? It's your boy Sanjit back at it with another video, man. Today we are live because I really want to get into some Raiders talk. Really want to just kind of go live and just chat with you guys, man. Let's talk state of the Raiders offensive and defensive line. Of course, we won't talk about just that. We'll get into some other stuff as well. But I really want to start going live a little bit more. I mentioned this actually the last time I went live. I'm always sitting here making 4, 5, 6 minute videos. Sometimes it feels nice to be able to go live and just talk football with you guys. So I hope you guys can hear me, man. Let me know in the comments below if you guys can hear me. I see a lot of people already here, so big shout out to all of you guys that are already here. Big shout out to you, man. Shadow X, shout out to you. Shout out to you, Michael. Said the autumn win. Appreciate that. Appreciate the comments that you guys saying you guys can hear me. Sometimes I start talking and I start thinking to myself, can you guys even hear me? Can you guys even hear what the hell I'm saying? So shout out to you guys, man. Shout out to you, Dreaded One. Said, what up, Sanjit? What up, Nation? Shout out to you, Anthony. Shout out to you, Chris. Appreciate all of you guys that are here. Todd Clements, let's go, Nation. Shout out to you for being a nation, man, or for being a member, man, being a member to the channel, supporting the channel. Big shout out to you. Man, today's an interesting time because think about it, man. Think about where the Raiders are at today. Like, how close are we to potentially winning a Super Bowl? Like, have we been closer on paper, at least, than where we're at right now? It's going to be an interesting season, man, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Just a quick comment regarding like the thumbnail and title of this video and kind of why I wanted to talk about the state of the O-line and D-line. I was on Instagram earlier, and someone left a comment on one of my recent posts. I think it was my Alex Leatherwood clip that I posted, and they said that basically they watched my last video and they said that you talk about winning a Super Bowl, but the thing you're not talking about is the fact that Super Bowls are won in the trenches. You can have Aaron Rodgers, you can have Drew Brees, you can have Peyton Manning, but those guys have like 3 Super Bowls combined, right? And they've played well over 40 seasons between all 3 of those guys. And the fact is that, yes, O-line, D-line are very important. And are the Raiders O-linemen and D-linemen weak? Are they not good enough to win? Because there's some issues within the offense and defensive line. And we're going to talk about all that today. And we'll probably get away from O-line and D-line. We'll probably talk about some other stuff as well. But I want to get into some of these comments, man. Big shout out to all of you guys already here. Shout out to you, Troy. Shout out to David. Shout out to Van City Raider. Shout out to all of you, man. I really appreciate it. What's interesting is I was looking at our depth chart recently, and I have it pulled up in front of me here. I was looking at our depth chart, and there's some players that like we don't really talk about that have maybe been here for a while or at least been here for a couple of seasons, and we don't really talk about them as if are they going to potentially start for the Raiders, right? Like everyone believes between Colton Miller, Denzel Good, Andre James, Alex Leatherwood, Dylan Parham, those 5 or 6 guys, that basically those are the guys that are going to make up this offensive line, right? Everyone kind of throws John Simpson to the side, Brandon Parker, even some guys we've had from the past, right? Like Lester Cotton Sr., who's now been here for I think this is his 4th year with the Raiders. Even a guy like Jackson Barton, who was picked up sometime last year. Like, people kind of sleep on some of these guys. So we're going to talk about some of these depth guys and really talk about what they could bring to the Raiders. I was talking to one of the Raiders offensive linemen recently, and I asked him who he predicts to start at the right tackle position. And this offensive lineman told me that he basically believes the right tackle position will be one between 4 guys. Alex Leatherwood, Brandon Parker, Jermaine Illuminor, and Jackson Barton. And I was surprised to hear Jackson Barton's name because I was like, who the hell is Jackson Barton? And then it hit me that we picked him up last year. But that sums up the right tackle position, right? That sums up pretty much one of the 4 guys that'll end up starting. And, I hope it's Alex Leatherwood. And, I'm very harsh on Leatherwood, right? I'm very hard. Maybe hard is the correct term. I don't take it easy on players, man. People who need to perform at a higher level, You guys know this. I'm very difficult. I don't take the positive approach all the time, right? I've done it with Derek Carr. I've done it with a guy like Cleveland Farrell. Alex Leatherwood is another example. I don't know why I take that approach, but I think it's the right approach to take because you know sometimes some of the things that I say, some other people will repeat those same things, and people will start having this narrative of certain players, and I think that helps these players to be the best version of themselves. All right. So for me, I always want to be critical. I don't want to be overly positive. Um, but yeah, man, I'm excited. We're gonna get into some of these comments, man. If you guys have comments, if you guys have questions, leave them in the comments below. Anyone that's a member will 100% get their comments shown up on the screen. The nation's own is a member. You guys can see that little symbol next to his name. Um, Big shout out to you for supporting the channel. Um, you know, what's interesting is I was actually looking at some of like my members and stuff like that. And there's some people that have been supporting this channel for like well over 12 months. And I may have to get together at a game or maybe in LA, just kind of depends on where people are, and really put something together for members, man, because you guys have really supported this channel. So shout out to all of you guys, man. I need to start putting your guys' names in the videos at the end of the video. I may start doing that soon. My opinion said Bam is playing, so that's a good one. We're gonna get into Bam Olaseni a little bit later on, and we're gonna talk about him and can he potentially be the Raiders' right tackle? I've seen some videos on YouTube. I've seen some content creators, some YouTube content creators that have pumped up Bam Olaseni so high, like they're like, yeah, this guy's gonna start. This guy's gonna be a beast. He's gonna be a superstar. Um, and I can't agree to that, man. Like my approach is a little bit different, right? Like I watched this tape and I just don't see it right now. And that doesn't mean he can't develop into it. And we'll talk about him a little bit later on. Let's get through some more of these comments. Big shout out to Ty Davis. He said Raiders. He's one of the guys that's been a member for a long time. So big shout out to you, man. I appreciate the fact that you're able to join. I'm going to figure out a good time to go live, and I will 100% post the times that will be going live. That way you guys can tune in, you guys can join. I typically don't post on Instagram or Facebook that I'm going live, but I should probably start doing that. I'm sure there's a portion of you guys that only follow me on one of those platforms or only have one of those platforms. We got the first super chat of the day. Shout out to Castro007. Big shout out to you. You said, do you think we'll keep Josh Jacobs? Go Raiders. Big shout out to you for the $2 donation, man. I really appreciate that. Since we're talking about the O-line and O-lines, I guess, and D-line, but I think Josh Jacobs is an interesting player, man. And I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, but I think Josh Jacobs is a very interesting player. If you guys think about where he was drafted, you think about that draft particularly, some of the players within that draft, right? Miles Sanders, David Montgomery. I think Montgomery was a third round pick, and then Miles Sanders was a second round pick. I don't think any other running backs were that good out of that draft. Between those two guys and Josh Jacobs, after their rookie years, most people would have said Josh Jacobs was the best running back out of that draft class. But since then, like the narrative has completely shifted. Some people now believe it's David Montgomery. Some people believe it's Miles Sanders. Some of us still believe it's Josh Jacobs, right? You can include me as a guy that still believes in Josh Jacobs. The unfortunate part with Josh Jacobs is the fact that he's going to want to get 10, 12, 13 million dollars, and we just don't have that money, right? You're asking if I think we'll keep Josh Jacobs. I do not. I do not think we have the cap space to keep Josh Jacobs. I posted this, or actually I said this in my last video with my Darren Waller video. I said that I don't know if the Raiders have enough money to pay Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, and Josh Jacobs. In fact, you guys can just go look at the cap space, right? Like it's right there. It's available. It's super public information. Go look at the Raiders cap space, and you guys will see that the Raiders cap space is not that large, man. We have like $20 million next year. And we have guys like Trayvon Mullen. We have Jonathan Abram. We have Hunter Renfrow. We have Josh Jacobs, of course, among some other players that need to get signed. Denzel Perryman, another example of a player that needs to get signed. We don't have the cap space, right? I would love to keep Josh Jacobs. And I think his talent is 10, 11, $12 million. I think that's what you would pay for that type of talent. Obviously, the O-line kind of hindered Josh Jacobs a little bit last year, and we're going to talk about how we can fix that up in a second. But I don't think the Raiders keep Josh Jacobs. Honestly, I just don't see the Raiders having enough cap space to keep Josh Jacobs. Now, I will say this. If the Raiders did want to keep Jacobs, one way you could keep him, and it's probably the only way you can keep him, is by not paying either Darren Waller or Hunter Renfrow, right? The option is you'll likely get to pick two of those three guys to keep here long term, right? You can't keep all three of them. That too, how much money can you possibly invest on the offensive side of the ball, right? Devontae Adams, almost $30 million. Derek Carr next year will be getting paid $35 million. Then you look at Colton Miller, who's already gotten paid. Then you look at a guy like maybe it's Andre James or Alex Leatherwood that may want a contract in 2 years or so. Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. How do you pay all these guys, right? So ultimately, I don't think the Raiders are going to keep Josh Jacobs. I just don't see us having the cap space. Mace G said, "Who is Colton Miller's backup?" I think Colton Miller's backup has to be Brandon Parker, right? Brandon Parker has to be the swing guy that we can all trust. In fact, I would argue that Brandon Parker is a better left tackle than he is a right tackle. I don't know what it is, but when I watch him at left tackle, he just looks better. Maybe it's because he was left tackle in college. Maybe he just feels more comfortable. Maybe he's left-handed, right? And it just feels more natural to him. For me, when I used to play, for me, right side was much more natural than the left side. Not saying you can't adjust to it, right? Obviously, these guys are professionals. This is all they should be doing. But you just never know, right? You just never know. The nation's own said, call them on their shit. Accountability is key. And that is fact. You know, an interesting story that happened recently is a Niners journalist named Grant Cohen. I don't know if you guys know the story or if you guys follow this. Grant Cohen called out one of their players, and he's been calling this player out, Javon Kinlaw, who's their defensive tackle. He was the, I think, the 14th overall pick. Grant Cohen's calling this guy out, and this guy got super angry and went off. He went up to Grant Cohen, who's a journalist, covers the Niners, during practice, and he apparently knocked his hat off, and he talked shit to him. And then he went on his show, his live show a little bit later on that day, and he talked more shit to him. And basically, Javon Kinlaw was angry that Grant Cohen calls him out. Grant Cohen tells these guys to their face, or not to their face, but he posts online, he posts on Twitter. He's kind of like Josh Dubow for the Raiders, right? If you guys follow Josh Dubow, works for the AP. Josh Dubow takes a very negative approach to the Raiders, and I know some people don't like it. Maybe Dubow's a little bit different. He's more biased towards Derek Carr. I think it's a little bit different, but Grant Cohen calls these guys out. He holds them accountable, and he doesn't do that to every player, right? He only does that to the players he thinks are not that great. And this guy has 45,000 subscribers on YouTube. I think he has like 35,000 on Twitter. But my point is he calls them out, and I think accountability is such a big part. And I think us as content creators should hold these guys accountable, right? We shouldn't say that every player is going to be a superstar. Every player is going to be a Hall of Fame player, because that's not fact, right? That's not truth. I appreciate the comment, man. I really, really do. Big shout out to Docs. He said, my brother, big shout out to you, man. We got to get together and do a show soon. I know we always say this, man, but we really got to do it. My schedule's definitely more freer. If you're available, hit me up, man. Let's talk about it. Big shout out to you. Aunt Six said, Sanjit, June 1st, who do we sign, and any surprise cuts from other teams that we might be interested in? We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about that in just a second. But big shout out to you, man. On 6, we're going to talk about some cuts and some June 1st stuff in just a second. But I want to kind of go through some of these comments. We got a super chat as well. We're going to get into that as well. Troy said, are you sold on the O-line? If not, what's your thought on what should we do to make it better? I'm going to be honest. I think the Raiders are fine in terms of their offensive line. And people may not necessarily agree with that, but I truly believe this. I think the Raiders' offensive line is 100% solid in what we have right now. And, you know, let's just go ahead and get right into it, right? First and foremost, when we talk about the offensive line, the thing everyone has to understand, right, is when you look at last year's group, right, Colton Miller, John Simpson, Andre James, Alex Leatherwood, Brandon Parker. Basically, 4 of those guys, it was their first time starting in the NFL. At least 4 of those 5 guys, right? John Simpson, first time starting, he's in year 2. Andre James, first year starting, he was in year 3 last year. Alex Leatherwood was a rookie, first year starting. And then Brandon Parker, although he's been a swing tackle, he's been a backup, it was his first year actually starting. So basically, outside of Colton Miller, everybody else had their first year starting. We always talk about that rookie jump that everyone has, right? From year 1 to year 2, you have this big jump in because you're used to the speed now. You play in your first year, you go in the offseason, you work out, you get stronger, you get more confident, and then you go into that next year, right? Into your second year. And that doesn't always have to be from your rookie season to your first season. Sometimes it's a player starts for the first time in his third season, right? It's the time you start, the time you actually start going out there and competing. And using that logic, right? Using that narrative right there, think about what the Raiders' offensive line is going to look like potentially, right? And at left tackle, of course, you have the solid, consistent left tackle in Colton Miller, a guy that I absolutely am super proud of to be able to take his game from where it was his rookie year to where it's at today. But then even left guard, like this year, technically we should have Denzel Good back, right? And if Denzel Good is back, I would argue that Denzel Good is a better left guard than Colton Miller is a left tackle. I would make that argument. And I'm not going to make it right now because I know some people are going to 100% disagree with that. But Denzel Good, some people regard as a top 10 guard in the league. Like people, and I'm not talking about like the average fan or the average person. I'm talking about like analysts, guys that watch offensive line tape. They would consider someone like Denzel Good a top 10 left guard. And I think if Denzel Good is back, you got Colton Miller at left tackle, Denzel Good at left guard. Andre James is going into his 4th year, but he's going into his 2nd year actually starting at that center position. He's gotten stronger. He's quicker. And I've spoken to some offense. He's gotten much stronger, man. I even read one of the guys that covers the Raiders, one of those beat writers, told me specifically, right, that this guy has actually noticed speed gotten bigger, as has Alex Leatherwood. So Andre James is going to be so much better this year. So your left tackle's legit, your left guard's legit, your center actually played legit in the second half of last year, but he's even stronger this year. Then your right guard and right tackle are the question marks. That's kind of what makes everyone scratch their heads when it comes to the offensive line. But here's the thing with that, right? Yes, you may scratch your head when you come to the Raiders offensive line and say, who's going to be the right guard, right tackle? But if I told you guys right now that at right guard, you're going to have Dylan Parham or potentially John Simpson or potentially Jermaine Illuminor, right? Any one of those 3 guys at right guard. And then let's just say your right tackle is Alex Leatherwood, and Alex Leatherwood holds it down, right? Let's say that Alex Leatherwood is very solid, very stout, and he holds it down at the right tackle position. Keep in mind, the guy's gotten so much stronger. I would be very comfortable with that offense line. Honestly, I think the only position that we're really not sure about is the right guard. That too, probably because the right guard is at this point going to be a rookie. But I want you guys to think about this, right? Last year we had Alex Leatherwood who played right guard, and Alex Leatherwood was pretty solid, right? Like Alex Leatherwood did a pretty solid job when he went from right tackle to right guard. Always keep in mind, right? Guard is always easier than playing tackle, right? Anchoring down on the outside is so much harder than being that guy on the inside. And Dylan Parham, keep in mind, played right guard in college, right? So this isn't going to be a new move for him. He doesn't have to move and transition. Like all Parham has to do is just get used to the speed. I think our offensive line is going to actually be pretty solid, honestly. And I don't think the Raiders have to do anything else other than what we already have right now. Big shout out to Pharaoh NFL, man. Big shout out to you, man. If you guys are not subscribed to Pharaoh, make sure you guys subscribe to him, man. Solid channel. Does a really good job. Big shout out to you. Got to get you on as well. Graphic responded saying, we don't. I've said this numerous times also. Absolutely, man. We gotta 100% just get together and get online, man. Yeah, man. Maybe I'll hit you up, man. I'll hit you up on Instagram and we'll get together. If you guys aren't subscribed to Docs, man, make sure you guys do. There's his name right there, DOXENT. Shout out to you as well. I see some comments regarding people not potentially paying Josh Jacobs. And And I want to know what you guys think, man. Do the Raiders pay Josh Jacobs? Do you pay Hunter Renfro, or do you pay Darren Waller? If you had to pick two out of those three, who are the two? Let me know right now in the comments below. What I actually want to do is get into these super chats real quick, and then after these super chats, we're gonna talk about the offensive line. Like I already gave you guys my five that I think will end up starting, but I want to talk about some of the depth guys. Bam Olaseni, Jermaine Illumina, right? The versatile offensive line who has experience with Josh McDaniels. I'm gonna talk about all that in a second, but let's get into some of these super chats. Big shout out to 818 Raider. He said, put that money you would give Jacobs towards the defense. They win you games. That's a good point because a lot of people are kind of concerned with the Raiders defense. We can put up 30 points on any given team, but what's going to happen when we play the New England Patriots, who run a great defensive scheme, right? When Bill Belichick comes out and double teams Devontae Adams and then puts his best player on Darren Waller and, he schemes up how to shut down Hunter Renfro. And let's say it's a close game. We have 12 points, 15 points, 18 points. How does the defense hold up? And that's going to be a big, big, big part of what happens to the Raiders this year. Like, let's just be honest, right? Josh Allen scored with 30 seconds left, maybe even less than that against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. And what did the Chiefs do? They scored within 2 plays. They're in field goal range. Like they scored that quickly. And not saying the Buffalo Bills defense is bad because I think technically they had the number 1 defense last year in points per game. But when you need a stop, right? When you need those players to step up, and maybe that's the issue with the Buffalo Bills. Like I don't really know any of their players on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe I know a couple, but like, are they guys that make a difference? Like, do they have Max Crosby or like Aaron Donald closed out the Super Bowl? Like, do they have those type of players? And that's the thing with the Raiders, right? Is we have these impact players, but can they make plays when needed? Will they be able to have that Khalil Mack effect that he had in 2016? And I think that's going to be a big thing. Now, of course, you can always add depth, but depth isn't going to close games out, right? Depth only does so much, right? Depth's going to help you beat the shittier teams in the league. Do we have enough players do we have enough impactful players? And I think that's going to be the difference for the Raiders this year. Where, can Max Crosby get the sack when needed? Can Chandler Jones get a strip sack when needed? Can Divine Diablo get an interception and return it to the house? Can Jonathan Abram hit someone and force a fumble? Can Trayvon Mullen intercept a pass and take it to the house? Remember, I think his rookie year, Trayvon Mullen had like so many plays where he would like jump the play and almost have an interception. He'd almost be able to pick something off and run it back to the house. Could he actually do that? Because his rookie year, Trayvon Mullen was like up here his rookie year, right? And like year after year, he just went downhill. And it seems like it's kind of been the same with that 2019 class, right? Like we see so much potential in some of these guys, and none of it ends up getting realized. But you make a good point. Should the Raiders take that money that Josh Jacobs has and put it towards the defense? This is a good question. I think long-term wise, I think the Raiders should do that. One of the reasons why I hesitate to pay a guy like Hunter Renfro and Josh Jacobs is, do they make enough of an impact that you want to spend 12, 15, $20 million for these guys? Do they have that much of an impact? Or could you pay $15 to $18 million for Jesse Bates, one of the league's best safeties, right? We could literally trade a first-round pick next year for Jesse Bates, pay him $18 million. We would lose Hunter Renfro, but you have a difference maker. You have a guy that can win games for you, right? So those are the tough questions that I think the Raiders have to really answer and think about. I appreciate the comment. Aunt6 said, Sanjit, June 1st, who do we sign? Any surprise cuts from other teams that we can sign? What does our O-line look like with Leatherwood at right tackle, right guard? I think I answered your question, man. But we'll get into that. And I promise you, we will get into some of the free agents that the Raiders have. And I promise you, we're going to get into your question in a second. So big shout out to you. We are going to get into your question. Well, let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about some of the players we have. I told you guys, left tackle to right tackle, who I think the Raiders should start, right? And just to clarify, Colton Miller, I think, is the Raiders' left tackle. Left guard, I think, should be Denzel Good. Center, Andre James. Right guard, Dylan Parham. Right tackle, Alex Leatherwood. Now, the only part that I deviate away from would be the right guard position. I would potentially swap out Dylan Parham for Jermaine Illuminor. And the reason why I say that is, when you look at this Raiders team, what type of team do you want to be? Do you want to be a punishing, let's run the ball, smash mouth football? Or do you want to be a team that throws the ball, gets in shotgun, protects Derek Carr, have a great offensive line that can hold up, pick up all these games and all this stuff? What do you want on the offensive side of the ball? And I think the identity of the Raiders is going to be a big part of what the Raiders do this year, right? Now, here's the thing. If you do swap out Dylan Parham for Jermaine Illuminor, does that mean Dylan Parham is a bust? And I don't think it does. I think one of the things with the Raiders taking Dylan Parham in the third round is consider his role, right? He's a third round pick, right? Third rounders don't always start, right? It's not always guaranteed that third round pick start. You look at a guy like Aaron Banks for the Niners last year, second round pick, isn't their starter, right? You look at the Raiders, John Simpson, fourth round pick from a couple years ago, isn't really a starter. Being taken doesn't mean you have to start, right? And I'm not saying Dylan Parham won't ever start, but he doesn't have to start right away. Right? Dylan Parham could be the Raiders' backup right guard. John Simpson could be the backup left guard, and you let Jermaine Illuminor and Denzel Good start at left and right guard, and you have veterans now in the middle of the offensive line. Colt Miller's a veteran, and you got three guys that are kind of veterans to help Alex Leatherwood. Even a guy like Andre James, you can say, could still need help. But my point is, you have veterans on the offensive line. That's a good offensive line unit, in my opinion. I don't see why that line could not be a top 10 unit, right? With Leatherwood at the right tackle, Illuminor at guard, James, Denzel Good, and Colt Miller. That's a good offensive line unit. And even if you want to swap in a guy like John Simpson or a guy like Dylan Parham, go for it, right? Even Lester Cotton, right? Like everyone always forgets Lester Cotton. He played at Alabama, and you can say if he was going to be a good player, he should have probably already started. That is fact, right? But never underestimate development. I had a guy tell me recently when I said that, hey, Denzel Good's probably the Raiders' best offensive lineman when healthy. I had a person tell me, oh, well, if he's so good, why is he a career journeyman? And I scratched my head because I said, I didn't realize that Denzel Good was a career journeyman. I didn't realize that being on your second ever team means you're a career journeyman. And I also didn't realize that you can't develop in the league. Apparently, developing isn't a real thing anymore. Denzel Good has played with the Colts and he's played with the Raiders. This is his second ever team. And he's been with the Raiders for what, 4 seasons or so, right? Maybe this is his 4th season. Denzel Good is a legit player, and I almost feel like a guy like Lester Cotton could develop, right? Never underestimate development. So with that being said, what if Lester Cotton proves that he's gotten a lot better this year, he's ready, and what if he ends up starting? What if he ends up winning the job? Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but never say never, right? I want you guys to think about this. What if Dylan Parham is the Raiders' future center? What if the Raiders actually believe Dylan Parham is the long-term solution at center? That Andre James, although he's a good football player, just isn't strong enough, right? What if Carmen Brasillo and Josh McDaniels, for their offensive line, they want strength. So they realize that Andre James isn't their guy. That's okay, right? Andre James can go somewhere else, and then maybe Dylan Parham is the center. But if Parham is the center, then who starts at right guard, right? Who's your long-term right guard? And then what about John Simpson? John Simpson, strong, built for the power run game, but he misses blocks. The guy doesn't process things correctly. So then who's your starting interior offensive lineman? Maybe it's a 6'4", 340-pound Lester Cotton, right? Alternatively, it could be a 6'5", 330-pound Thayer Munford, right? Maybe he's the starting guard, right? Never say never. Like, I'm not a fan of Thayer Munford. Personally, I would have never developed him, or I would have never drafted him. I would have taken 10 other offensive linemen over Thayer Munford. Even in the 7th round, there are other guys I would have taken. The thing is this, right? Some people will say Thayer Munford is, he's won these awards, he's this, he's that, he played better in this year versus this year. Um, and all that, although all of that is true, when you watch Thayer Munford's tape, it's too inconsistent. And I think if you're an inconsistent offensive lineman in college, you're not going to be a good offensive lineman in the NFL. Sure, you can absolutely develop, but sometimes I don't get it. Um, and let me clarify something. People are going to say, Sanji, what qualifies you over someone like Josh McDaniels, right? Josh McDaniels and his team are so much more intelligent than you, Sanji. You're just some dumbass YouTuber that doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. Although all that's true, do keep this in mind. There are scouts, there are GMs, there are people out there that will draft Cleveland Farrell with the 4th overall pick, Solomon Thomas with the 3rd overall pick. There are guys out there that will take Baker Mayfield with the number 1 overall pick. Never underestimate the fact that there are so many people around the league that draft people wrong. There are so many people that don't see talent correctly. And I'm not saying I do, right? I'm far from that. I'm just saying never believe that these guys in the NFL just know what they're doing, right? Because there's so many different ways to evaluate talent, right? I'll give you guys an example. There's a guy that I follow named Brandon Thorne, right? He's an offensive line guru, or I shouldn't say guru, but he's an offensive line guy. It's all he does is break down offensive line. Like you can ask him about linebacker, safety, he doesn't care. He'll tell you about his favorite guard, right? Super intelligent guy. Um, but the way he ranks his players, like you can tell this guy understands offensive linemen. And you can make the argument that not all 32 GMs are necessarily better at evaluating offensive linemen than him, right? You can look at the backgrounds of some of these general managers, right? John Lynch, is, as an example for the Niners, he was a safety, right? So you can't tell me that he may know more about offensive linemen than a guy like Brandon Thorne may potentially know, right? My point in saying all that is, for the Raiders to draft Thayer Munford in the 7th round doesn't mean Munford is going to be a good football player, right? It just means that they may look at him as a good developmental piece. Maybe he's a future guard for the Raiders, right? So it's going to be very interesting to really see what ends up happening. Mario Arena says, Andre James is Sanjit's guy. I absolutely loved Andre James, man. When the Raiders got him, he was a player that I really, 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 really loved. Like I was really high on him. I remember posting videos and getting a lot of hate for saying I think Andre James is going to be a good football player. I even remember talking to Colton Miller. I went. He made a video with me on this channel. If you guys haven't seen it, you guys can probably YouTube it. But I asked him about Andre James, and he told me this was before Andre James took over for Rodney Hudson. He told me that he believed that after Rodney Hudson, Andre James is going to be the starter. This was literally like 3 months before the Raiders got rid of Rodney Hudson. Right. So I think there are guys out there that can evaluate talent well. What the Raiders did so far, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I kind of don't like it. And I don't know. And I hope it proves me wrong. But you know what Mike Mayock and John Gruden did, from what I know of who was John Gruden's picks and who was Mike Mayock's picks, I can tell you guys right now, Mike Mayock knows what he's doing. John Gruden has the worst eye that I've ever seen for talent. Like the guy doesn't know what he's doing. An example of some of the picks that I know 100% fact. John Gruden wanted Cleveland Farrell at 4. He wanted Josh Jacobs as well with pick 24. And then he wanted Trayvon Mullen in the 2nd round of that 2019 draft. He was also the guy that wanted Alex Leatherwood and Henry Ruggs. Although I will say the Henry Ruggs pick was probably a good pick. Mike Mayock wanted Jonathan Abram in that 2019 pick. That was a Mike Mayock guy. But Mike Mayock did also get wrong the Damon Arnett pick. That was a Mike Mayock pick. Guys like Nate Hobbs and Max Crosby, those are Mike Mayock picks, right? So never put those two guys together, right? But with Josh McDaniels, kind of what he did, wasn't a big fan of this draft, honestly. I liked some of our picks. But even Dylan Parham, like I'm not the biggest fan of Dylan Parham. I'm just not. I think if the Raiders wanted to get if the Raiders wanted to lock down their right guard, right tackle position, they could have literally traded up a couple of picks for either Luke Godicki or I forget the other guy's name. But it was the other guy that played with Godicki at the left tackle in college. I forget his name. And I think those guys are going to be much better pros. And keep in mind, both of those guys are tackles, although some people say Luke Godicki is going to be a right guard. I think that would have been a better pick than Dalen Parham. And those guys went literally just a couple picks before Parham. Yeah, we would have had to trade up, but how good is Dylan Parham going to be? Like, what is his projection? Is he going to be an all-pro football player? I don't know, right? But there is a super chat that I want to get into from David Scott. Big shout out to you. David says the big problem is everyone wants a guy to come out of college and be perfect and have no issue, which really never happens. And that is fact, right? That's 100% fact. A lot of people look at a guy like Colt Miller and had so much issues with him his first year. And, I will say this on your comment. Looking at offensive linemen specifically, there are some traits that you look at an offensive lineman and you let it go, right? You say that could be fixed. An example would be strength, right? A guy can always get stronger, right? No matter who it is, you can always get stronger. So when you look at Colton Miller and Andre James as two examples for the Raiders, I love both of those guys. I love Colton Miller. I loved Andre James. And I said the things that I loved was things like the way they saw the game, right? The way when a linebacker shifted the angle they would take to cut that guy off. Or when they set back in pass protection, maybe the defensive line ran a game and the way they process and pick that up. All right, those are qualities and traits that you can get behind, right? If a guy's losing because he gets bull rushed and he's not strong enough, or the game's just a little bit too quick for him, you can fix those. Those things are fixable. But then when there's a guy like maybe like, John Simpson, who doesn't see the game well, John Simpson's super strong, right? But strength doesn't matter as much. If you can't, if a guy delay blitzes and you can't see that, if you're blocking down, you're double teaming with the center and a guy comes off the edge and you can't see it quick enough, that's an issue. I don't know how you fix that, right? If you can't see it now, are you going to be able to see that in the future, right? So I agree with what you're saying, David. I think when a guy comes out of college, there are some traits, there are some things that you can, get behind and say, you can fix these things, and this guy will be a good prospect. Here's the thing with Darren Munford that I see today, at least in college, and keep in mind this could change once I see him in preseason, and I will only need to see him play 2 or 3 games in preseason. I will have a legit judgment of what I think about this guy, and if I think his game will succeed in the league. But when I watch Darren Munford's tape at Ohio State, what I see with Munford is this: on one play, he'll block out, he'll do a good job. Then the following play, he'll block out, and the guy will jump to the inside, fake Munford, and just jump back to the outside. And Munford's too slow, right? He's too slow to react. He's not. His feet aren't quick enough. Or I'll see Munford throw a punch with his hands, and he misses, and then he's too slow to get those hands back up, right? He's too slow in his counter moves. So my point is this, right? I think Darren Munford is not very quick, and if he's going to play tackle, I think there's a big issue with that. And another issue is I think Munford played better at left tackle than he did at left guard, right? I believe it was the year before that he played tackle and he had like one of the highest PFF grades. And then when he went to the inside, he didn't play as well the following year, right? So when you look at Munford, where's he project? Is he going to project as an offensive tackle or as an offensive guard? I think that's going to make a big, big difference for him. And of course, we'll obviously see what the Raiders do there. But another guy that the Raiders picked up is Bam Olaseni, and he's an undrafted free agent, small school guy, right? Where does he project? Is he going to be a right tackle? When I saw his height and size, I instantly thought, oh, this is like Trent Brown, basically, right? This is what Josh McDaniels loves. But when the Raiders actually listed him, they listed him, I think, at 6'7", like 340, and I thought it's not that big, right? 6'7", and that's big. Don't get me wrong, right? Compared to the average person, I'm not my NFL standards. 6'7" is, for an offense lineman, it's not as big as you would expect. And Bam Olaseni, I see the same issues that I see with Darren Munford, but to an even higher extent. And keep in mind, he's playing at an even lower level than someone like Thayer Munford, right? Two completely different schools. And I think Olaseni struggles even more, which is crazy that some people project Olaseni as starting. Have you guys seen that? Have you guys seen people projecting Bam Olaseni as the Raiders starting right tackle? It's mind blowing to me that people think that. I would be surprised if he even made the roster based off of where he was in terms of his tape. Um, I saw somewhere where someone said that he handled Kayvon Thibodeau, right? I remember seeing I don't know if it was a video or if it was a Twitter thread. I saw something about how Bam Olaseni handled Kayvon Thibodeau, and that could not have been further from the truth. Kayvon Thibodeau dominated Bam Olaseni. Olaseni had maybe like 4 reps where he was able to stop Thibodeau, or maybe they're like quick throws or stuff like that. But Bam Olaseni did not contain Kayvon Thibodeau. And if you guys don't know, Thibodeau was, I think, the 4th overall pick. I think went to the Giants. Kayvon Thibodeau, if you guys watched that entire game on true pass sets, Thibodeau was beating him, and maybe he didn't hit the quarterback or get to the quarterback. But if you guys think Bam Olaseni is the Raiders' right tackle, especially if he's going to start, Derek Carr is going to be in trouble, man. I don't know, man. I don't see that. But keep in mind, don't clip that and quote that as fact. Keep in mind, once I see preseason week 1 tape, I will have I'll revise these opinions and we'll make videos, man, talking about all these players and kind of what we see. We'll do some film stuff. So again, big shout out to all of you guys that are here, man. If you guys could hit that thumbs up button real quick, I'd really, really, really appreciate that. I want to kind of go through some of these comments a little bit. I see a lot of people talking about Andre James and Patrick Hill. Shout out to you, man. Said Baker was a stud in college. And I don't disagree with that. I was a big Baker Mayfield fan, man, coming out of college. I would have taken him with the number 1 overall pick as well, too. So Jimmy C said Munford no worse than Leatherwood year 1. I don't know, man. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Maybe not as a guard, right? But Alex Leatherwood was pretty good as a guard, right? At least in my opinion, he wasn't that bad at guard. But if you think Darren Munford's going to start at right tackle, right? Because, we have a right tackle and a right guard position that's kind of up for battle. I think our center, left guard, left tackle are kind of locked in. I think the right guard, right tackle, you could move Munford to the right guard position. But, I don't know. All right, you can say he's not going to be any worse than Leatherwood. But do we want to have that same O-line and kind of what happened to Derek Carr last year? Do we want to have that repeat this year? Right? I would say no, absolutely not. I think this year we're going to be a much better team. And part of that is going to be to have a better offensive line. My opinion, obviously, said Munford is a guard. Jimmy C said Munford better than Sam Young and Parker, I bet. Maybe he is, but I don't think we have Sam Young anymore. I think he retired last year. And I don't know if Munford is better than Brandon Parker this year, right? I'm not a Brandon Parker stan or anything. You guys know this. But Brandon Parker is not that bad, right? Like he's okay, right? He's like maybe he's average, maybe he's a little bit below average. He's a guy, right? But Munford has to prove himself first, right? Let's not before he ever plays in the league. Let's just not say Munford's going to be a shutdown tackle. He wasn't even that in college, right? So I don't know if he's going to be that here for the Raiders. There's a lot of reps of Munford losing. That's Jimmy C said Leatherwood was bad. LOL. Yeah, man. I don't know. I think at guard he wasn't as bad. I don't know what. Let me know what you guys think about that. How was he last year? Clark Arroyo says, is Tom Cable the reason the O-line struggled? I'm going to say yes. I think Tom Cable was partly to blame, right? I wouldn't say he was the 100% reason why. I think Tom Cable was part of the issue. I think having Alex Leatherwood going as the day 1 starter at right tackle was also an issue because he struggled at right tackle. False starts, holdings, allowing Derek Carr to get hit, pressured, all this stuff. I think that was a big issue. But keep in mind, I think the fact that our right guard went out real quick. Denzel Good last year was our starting right guard. He was knocked out real quick. I think week 1 tore his ACL, out for the season. If he was 100% healthy, I think our offense line would have been better. Right? I think the Raiders' offense line would have been better if Denzel Good was healthy at right guard, because Denzel Good would have helped Alex Leatherwood. He would have helped his confidence. We swapped once Denzel Good got out. We brought in Jermaine Illuminor, right? And Illuminor started for the Raiders at right guard, and it just wasn't the same, right? It wasn't the same type of offensive line. I would say Tom Cable, it was partly to blame last year for the struggles on the offensive line, but you can also say Alex Leatherwood struggling, and maybe that's Alex Leatherwood's fault for drafting him. I'm sorry, Tom Cable's fault for wanting him, or John Gruden's, who wanted Alex Leatherwood. A lot of us said that the Raiders would have been better off taking Christian Darrisaw or Tevin Jenkins. I'm going to stick with that. I think the Raiders would have been better taking either of those two guys. And I know people are going to say, well, Tevin Jenkins didn't really play last year, but Christian Darrisaw looks really good. He looks like he's going to be a good offensive tackle for the rest of his career. And we'll see what happens to Alex Leatherwood. Maybe he develops this year, so we'll obviously see. We'll watch the tape when that kind of comes out. But it's going to be very, very interesting. Another guy that I kind of want to talk about is Jackson Barton. Can Jackson Barton potentially start for the Raiders? Barton is 26 years old. He was a 7th round pick in the 2019 draft out of Utah. He's 6'7". He has good size. He's strong, quick, explosive. Can Jackson Barton start for the Las Vegas Raiders? That's going to be an interesting question. I think he has a shot, right? Let me repeat that. I don't know if he has a shot at starting for the Raiders, but never say never when it comes to players, right? Last year, most people would have said Jermaine Illuminor, who the hell is that, right? Most people would have said that. And I think when it comes to Jackson Barton, I think he's going to have a shot to start. Let's say this. Let's say Alex Leatherwood does not start at right tackle and Alex Leatherwood starts at right guard. Who's the Raiders' right tackle? Who do you guys have the most confidence in starting at right tackle, assuming it is not Alex Leatherwood? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I personally think if it's not Alex Leatherwood, I would say Brandon Parker for sure. And then maybe Jermaine Illuminor, although I don't know if Illuminor is a guard or a tackle. But after those two guys, I probably have the most confidence in Jackson Barton as the number 3 guy. If Jermaine Illuminor is a right guard, right, let's say he's the backup right guard, Brandon Parker's number 1, but then maybe Jackson Barton's number 2 to him. A good preseason could knock out Brandon Parker, and boom, Jackson Barton ends up starting. Never say never on who's going to end up starting at that right tackle position, but it's going to be interesting to see what the Raiders end up doing, because there are still some free agent options available, right? And I'm gonna pull up the list really quickly, and kind of discuss some of the players that the Raiders could target. If you guys don't know, June 1st is literally right around the corner, which means the Raiders are going to have a lot more cap space. The Raiders will be able to pick some guys up coming up in the next couple of days to weeks. We're going to get almost $26 million. So with that being said, if the Raiders have $26 million more available to spend, who do you pick up? Who are some options that the Raiders could pick up? A guy that some people have mentioned in the past for the Raiders to potentially pick up, Eric Fisher, who is 31 years old, is technically still out there. Riley Reef is still out there. I think the Raiders were tied to him sometime last year. Some other guys, Dwayne Brown, although he's way up there in age. Nate Soldier as well is kind of up there in age. There's definitely a lot of offensive tackles. Brandon Shell, former Raiders offensive line coach. So there's a lot of players, some impactful players that could potentially come to the Raiders. Julio Jones, Landon Collins, I think are 2 guys that could come in, have an impact. Even a guy like Akeem Hicks. Hicks is still out there. Will Fuller, right? Will Fuller's another guy. So June 1st is right around the corner. So I think there's going to be some good players that the Raiders could potentially pick up. James Farrell said it's tomorrow. I think tomorrow's the 31st. So June 1st is in 2 days. So It's gonna be interesting. I do think that the Raiders need to definitely still consider offensive tackle. Um, you know, I'm confident in the current offensive line. I'm actually confident with Alex Leatherwood at right tackle. But I do know some people are not confident with Alex Leatherwood. A guy that some people have mentioned a lot is Darrell Williams, who was, I believe, with the Buffalo Bills. He was their right tackle. He's still fairly young. I think he just turned 29. So he is a guy that could potentially be brought to the Raiders. Jack Canna said the cap is going to Renfro and Waller. Well, the thing is those two guys are already under contract for the Raiders this year. So even if we extended both of those guys, that cap space will not matter until next year. Now, the exception will be Darren Waller. They say Darren Waller wants a raise, so that would be the one and only exception. Watts Raider said they got 26 million, but only going to spend like 5 of it. Maybe I could see that happening. I could see Darren Waller getting a raise, right? So you spend some of that for Darren Waller. It's going to be interesting what the Raiders do, but I will say this. If the Raiders are serious about winning a Super Bowl this year, they need to bring in some guys on 1-year contracts. Remember, last year it was late, right? Around training camp, we brought in Casey Hayward, we brought in Denzel Perryman, Roderick Teamer, right? Some of these guys we picked up super late, and these guys had impacts for the Raiders. I would be very surprised if the Raiders don't do those same things this year, right? I would be very, very, very surprised if the Raiders don't pick up some of these guys that can come in, sign a 1-year contract, and have impacts for the Raiders. A couple other guys that are still out there that the Raiders, in my opinion, should probably target. Go get Akeem Hicks. Akeem Hicks has so many sacks. Gerald McCoy, another guy. I know he was with the Raiders last year, and obviously he got hurt. But those are two guys that in the past have, at least when they're healthy, are superstar players. And I would target a guy like Akeem Hicks before. I'm a big, big, big believer in Malcolm Koonce. I think this year Malcolm Koonce may end up having a better year than Chandler Jones. May end up having a better year than Max Crosby in terms of sacks, total sacks. I think Malcolm Koonce is really going to take off. I truly, truly, truly believe that Malcolm Koonce this year is going to have big impacts for the Raiders. And the thing is like I rewatched this tape and I have a film breakdown in the works of Malcolm Koonce. So hopefully I can drop that either this week or the following week. The way Malcolm Koonce used his hands in college, kind of like how Max Crosby used his hands in college, was the reason why these two guys had success in college, right? Obviously, they both went to lower level schools, so they weren't drafted high. But in their rookie years, both guys, when given the opportunity, flashed those hands. Malcolm Koonce had less opportunity than Max Crosby, but Malcolm Koonce flashed his hands last year as a rookie. I think he played he played like 50 snaps. I think like 29 or 30 of them were like pass rushing snaps. And Malcolm Koonce got after the quarterback. And I don't see why Koonce could not do that again this year if he has 300, 400 snaps. I think Gus Bradley made a big mistake last year, not allowing Koonce to play more. And I think Gus Bradley has, I don't know if attachment is the right word, but he has a connection with Yannick Ngakoue. And he let Ngakoue play more, in my opinion, than Max Crosby, or I'm sorry, than Malcolm Koonce. And I think that was a big mistake last year. I think Malcolm Koonce could have had a bigger impact. Think about this. Last year, Malcolm Koonce rushed the snapper about 30 times, right? So 30 total snaps last year, you let him go after the quarterback. In those 30 snaps, he had 2 sacks and 3 quarterback hits. In literally 30 snaps, he touched the quarterback 5 times. A guy like Max Crosby or an average guy, Cleveland Farrell. And Cleveland Farrell had like 200 pass rushing snaps last year. Max Crosby well over 400 pass rushing snaps. Koonce had 30, and he was able to touch the quarterback 5 times. So let's see if Malcolm Koonce can have a big year this year. I think he will. I think Malcolm Koonce is going to have a big year. Obviously, Max Crosby is Max Crosby. Chandler Jones is Chandler Jones. But who steps up after those two guys, right? And I think, especially on the interior defensive line, I know people are very, very, very concerned. And I think post June 1st, you have to target an interior defensive lineman. If there's one thing on this Raiders roster that's going to hold us back, it's the fact that outside of Max and Chandler or defensive end in general, who's going to bring that pressure? Is Balil Nichols or Vernon Butler or Kyle Pecco, Matthew Butler, the rookie, or Neil Farrell Jr., the other rookie? Are those guys good enough on the inside to collapse the pocket, swim over the guard, double hand swipe, and get after the quarterback? Are those guys good enough to shed blocks and really have be disruptive on the inside? I don't know, right? But I don't want to find out midseason and then realize that we let Akeem Hicks go to the Denver Broncos or a guy like Justin Houston go sign somewhere else, right? Depending on how we kind of run our defense. I'd want the Raiders to shore up that interior defensive line spot. I'm a fan of Jonathan Hankins, but Hankins isn't the best pass rusher. I'm a fan of a guy like Vernon Butler, but he doesn't do any one thing at a top tier level. Akeem Hicks is a superstar player, and I know he's up there in age, but I think, getting a guy like Hicks for 1 year, $3 million may be worth the gamble. Like, what else are you going to do with that money regardless, right? You can't carry cap into next year. You can't have $26 million and expect to carry that. Although, technically, you can carry some cap into next year, but it's not like you're going to carry the entire $26 million. So you need to spend it this year, right? You have to spend it. You have to be able to get your team better. And let's be honest, man, the Raiders are going to win the Super Bowl this year if they're going to win based off of how good their pass rush is and how good their O-line holds up in pass blocking. That's going to be what it is, right? If Derek Carr is protected, he's going to have success. If the Raiders can shut down opposing quarterbacks, we're going to win games, right? That's literally what it's going to come down to. I'm struggling talking here, man, so I'm going to go ahead and end the video. But if you guys could hit that thumbs up button, keep in mind, we're going to be going live way more often. My hope is that 3 or 4 times a week. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I'm going to start aiming for that. Maybe I'll start that this week or the week after, but we'll be going live much, much, much more often. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys had a good weekend. And I guess today's Monday. Technically, it's not a weekday, but I'm sure a lot of you guys were off for Memorial Day. Big shout out to all of you guys, man. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. I appreciate all the super chats, all the members, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.